Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome here at Crypto Hash Review, and we are continuing our Bitcoin series, introducing to you the history of money, and thereon we'll be discussing about Bitcoin. In the previous episode we discussed about the history of pre-metallic money, money that was before metals, and then we discussed metallic money up to and including certificate money, as in money that was used as a certification of coins stored somewhere else. And today we're going to just very briefly look at what happened during this history of metallic money. Some important key points. Starting off with, initially with money prior to coinage, it was in nugget forms, and the way people exchanged was in weight. So they got the nuggets put on a scale, and the way that was not a known weight, and that's how they kind of sold things. And as you can imagine, there's that friction of transaction when you don't get exactly the right amount. Maybe I've got 3 chunks, 4 chunks, and I put those chunks in, and then add this chunk here is too heavy, take one out, put this other chunk here is too light. I can't get the exact amount. Maybe people would have tools to maybe cut a piece off of your chunks, which would make your already small chunk now 2 smaller chunks, which don't usually come together. So it was having used, it was possible, but as a form of medium of exchange, it had its friction. The issue is friction. If you look at the history of money, it's always about reducing friction. Friction from just everyone memorizing how much you own, to just putting it into physical form. Maybe get some shells. Now I've got to find these shells and got to look after these shells. Got to maintain these shells or maintain these beads. Now I've got metal. Metal is a bit more durable. I could in theory melt them together to make a bigger chunk. In theory. So it's all about reducing friction. And the biggest friction or reduction of friction came with the coinage, minting coins, because by doing that, I now can guarantee that I can now put aside even the weights or the scales. I can now do business direct. You give me, I give you, done. So therefore, I've now made the commerce more immediate, immediate and frictionless. But what happened with the Lydians, remember the Lydians were the first ones to actually mint actual coins, is that with all countries, they fell into war with one of their neighbors. And with all wars, you need to fund the campaigns. You need to pay the soldiers, you need to feed them, you need to clothe them, buy weaponry, defense shields. So the country began to exhaust its monetary reserves. So the money it had on store was being depleted, and they were going to lose the war by simply running out of money, which is a concept which is quite new to us in this day and age, for running out of money. When I say new to us, as in us as those who were born, because we live in a society whereby people just print money, but we'll put that to the side for now. In the past, if you wanted to go to war, you had to have money for that. And if you had no money, you had no war. So they had an idea, okay, if I add some copper to these gold coins, it won't be pure gold, but at least we'll have more coins to spend. So that was the beginning of government manipulation of the monetary supply or the currency that led to the depletion of its value. And the more they minted more coins and the more they added copper to it to get more coins, the less essentially value it had. But obviously initially they never noticed, the people who used it never noticed. But as time went on and the coin became more and more apparent that it was less gold than it was supposed to be, people began to lose trust in the coin, and eventually that led to the collapse of the whole economic system. People no longer wanted to converse or not converse, to transact using their coins, and that essentially was the end of that currency. And the same happened in Rome. Rome minted their own coins, and as time went on, they were watering down the gold content of their coin or the silver content of their coins to issue more coins, essentially inventing money. And I think that was probably the first time where mankind discovered the act of inventing money out of thin air. Because before that, if you wanted to have money, you had to have something. To have money, you had to first get it. You got to go out into the beaches, look for these shells, go to the mountains and mine the ore or mine the gold and silver and smelt it. You had to do something to make coins. In this case here, they still had to do something, but a lot less. A lot less than what it's supposed to be. So you're trying to mint coins which is worth X amount, but I can add some commonly found copper and get more out of my coinage. So that was the first time they began to where people started to manipulate directly, wrongfully as well, the currency supply. And that began to happen during the time of Rome. And what happened at some part, as later on, as it became more and more prevalent, more and more common, is that the Romans began to stamp the value of the coin on the coin. And if people rejected its value, because obviously they already see that the value had been reduced, the phrase "take it on face value" came into play, whereby the government began to enforce people to exchange the coins as it is for the value it stated on it, not for the actual weight value of the gold content of the coin. So the idea of taking something on face value came from that. And I think the end of the Roman Empire, as it relates to what they did to their currency, began when the army itself began to refuse to take payment in that currency. They said, no, we don't want that rubbish coin, we want something else. We want actual gold or something else. And that was essentially the beginning of the collapse of the Roman Empire. And essentially, this was actually connected to the Muslim Empire. Why did the Muslims begin to mint their own coins? Because of what was happening abroad. Essentially, Muslims were being affected by the dilution of the currency by foreign policies. So the foreigners could actually affect their economy by what they're doing in other countries. So one of the reasons or motivations behind minting their own coins as Muslims was so that they can guarantee that the coin is worth X amount and not be succumb to foreign manipulation. So that was one of the things why they did that, Marwan Hakam and others. So this idea of debasing their currency began before paper money existed. This is something people always think that paper money was the beginning of debasing their currency. They just print more money, just print. It's not the issue of printing. You can debase the currency even if it's using gold. Even gold can be debased. Even gold can be debased if you just mix the gold with something else. And that's so the debasing of a currency, or another way of looking at it, the depletion of its value or its spending power can occur even in metal-based currencies, which happened in the past. One interesting part, this is the final part here, one interesting part about looking at the debasing of the currencies that were metal, the metallic-based currencies, and the debasing of currencies that happened in paper, because what happened after they started to print more paper is that they began to print more money than was actually represented in the vault. So they had maybe 10 kilograms of gold in the vault, and they had 10 pieces of paper to represent each kilogram. And what they did was just print off more paper. So there was more paper in circulation than there was gold to back it. That happened with the paper money. But the difference between that is that when you debase a monetary-based system, you can only debase the currency you have. So imagine what would end up happening, which happened again during the Roman Empire. You had older coins that may have been 10, let's say 10 shekels or 10 coins, 10 dinars. So 10 dinars prior to Caesar, or whatever it is worth more than 10 dinars after him, or whatever the case may be, because they recognize that this time it was more pure, this time it was more diluted. So debasing the metallic-based currencies was only affected the newer coins, the newer issued coins. Whereas when you debase a certificate-based system whereby you have the gold in the vault and you have pieces of paper that represent that gold, when you print off more paper, you end up debasing all the money in circulation. So, like I said, you got 10 pieces of gold in the vault. You have 10 pieces of paper in circulation, each with 1 on it. So you can say each paper is worth 1 kilogram. If I now print off another 10 pieces of paper, although it still says written 1 on it, in practice, it's now worth half of the gold because there's now 20 in circulation, 20 pieces of paper in circulation, but 10 pieces of gold in the vault. So now effectively you now have debased all currencies that are in circulation by the printing of more paper. Whereas when you just debase the actual coin, metal coin, you can only debase the coin that's in your hand. So that's one of the you could say the updates of moving away from metallic currency to paper currency, is that when you move to paper currency, you're able to debase the currency as a whole. And that's why some people call it a stealth tax. It's a means of the government taking money from you without directly taking it from you. So you think your money is worth X amount, but it's actually worth less because the government has, you can almost say, siphoned off a portion of its value into its own vaults so it can spend. That's what they call it, a stealth tax. In our next video, we're going to explore further what happened when central banks begin to form and pop up around the world, what happened during the Second World War and something called the Bretton Woods Agreement, and what happened with the Nixon shock, and so on and so forth. And we're going to transition from the certificate-based system over to our current monetary system, which is in play globally, as we see right now. Please subscribe, join our channel, join our mailing list if you want to find out more information about our articles and videos that we release in the future. And if you want to give us a call, give us a shout, you can shout, give us, find our number, or you can find our contact details on our website, cryptohashreview.com. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.